Hey, how's it going, friends? Thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations. Welcome. I'd sure appreciate it if you could give this video a thumbs up and also make sure you subscribe for future content. And if you want to support the channel, check out the links below. You can head over to my Rumble backup channel. I am trying to upload as many videos as I can on there, so check that out. But anyways, it is February 27, the year of our Lord 2023, and let's jump right into the news. So, as you might have been able to tell by the title of this video, or the thumbnail, Zelensky has in fact fired one of Ukraine's top commanders at a very crucial point in the war against Russia. Now, I say very crucial because, as I've been showing here for the past couple of videos, the situation right now is very desperate for Ukraine. Now, I've been focusing a lot on Bakhmut, of course. That is the main focus right now for everybody, pretty much covering the conflict. And if we take a quick look at the map, you can see that there is massive amounts of artillery right now going on along the front lines. So things are just ramping up right now, when a couple of months ago the U.S. was propagating this rumor that Russia was possibly running out of missiles or artillery, but that is not the case, guys. As you can see here, this is a map that is updated literally by the hour. And it's very pro-Ukrainian, but you can see here all the areas where Russia is attacking right now, and they are about to take Bakhmut, guys. Literally every day, the red inches closer here to the center of the city. As I covered in yesterday's video, the forces here only have one option, that is to literally run as fast as they can out of Bakhmut before they are trapped. Other than that, they can surrender or go down fighting. But this is going to be a big loss for Ukraine. It's going to be a big blunder, especially because the United States warned Zelensky and the leadership around him a couple of weeks ago, telling Zelensky, hey, you know what, look, I know you've made a big deal out of Bakhmut. I know you called it a fortress. I know you've been saying that it's a symbol of Ukrainian resistance, but think about pulling the Ukrainian troops out and saving them for a future battle. But Zelensky instead doubled down, and he made comments just weeks ago that they would fight to the last man in Bakhmut, and that it was a fortress. Some even called it an impregnable fortress, impenetrable fortress. And so, of course, that was just a lot of, a lot of nonsense, pretty much. And most honest analysts predicted that Bakhmut would fall to the Russians, just as Soledar did up here to the north. Now, the Ukrainians, they fought it out bravely over here in Soledar, and surely they've a lot of men here have fought bravely in Bakhmut. But again, the Russian forces are also fighting bravely, and a lot smarter and a lot stronger. And so this is going to be a big loss for Zelensky here. And it looks like he's starting to vent some of his anger and frustration that you can experience with failures, especially when we're talking about life and death situations such as war, right? Depression is a very strong feeling that can come upon these leaders, right, when the world is crumbling around them. And you'll see this as they start firing people and as they start getting getting suspicious of those around them. And so I'm going to show you here now on my YouTube page that a couple of weeks ago, some strange things happened around Zelensky. First of all, as you can see here, right down here to the left, I made this video just a month ago, and Zelensky's former advisor, Arestovich, resigned right after a Russian rocket was shot down by a Ukrainian defense system, and the rocket landed on an apartment building, killing residents in that building. Right away, Ukraine tried to blame it or describe it as a direct strike, a deliberate direct strike on the building by the Russians. So Ukraine was trying to paint Russia as a terrorist state, right? And it tried to propagate this news that the missile flew right into the apartment complex. But then Arestovich here actually had an interview where he said that no, the Russian missile was in fact shot down, and then it landed on the apartment building and killed some people in there, quite a few, I believe. Of course, it's terrible, the casualties, the loss of innocent lives in these conflicts, right? And the collateral damage and all of that. Of course, there are always war crimes and bad actors in all conflicts. So, there are situations when people from both sides may carry out things that are evil, pretty much. But this was not the case, and so right away they called for Arestovich here to be kicked out of government, pretty much to be fired. So he ended up resigning, and then he actually went on to talk trash about Zelensky, saying that he didn't know what he was doing. And then literally, guys, as you see here, a couple of days later, as we had this shakeup here with this advisor to Zelensky leaving, we had this freak accident, right? Now, people suffer from short-term memory. It's like they didn't even make a big deal about this. Like, it's already forgotten with everything going on. But we actually had the Minister of Interior Affairs, along with other high-ranking politicians, die in a helicopter crash. I mean, it was engulfed in flames, right? Apparently, the helicopter crashed. I'm not even sure if they actually came to a conclusion, but it ended up hitting a kindergarten building, I believe, and I think there was some children that died there. But yeah, it was pretty strange, and you can go watch those videos of me talking about it. I did talk about how it could have possibly been an inside attack, right? Internal conflicts here between these men in positions of power. And so this is the probabilities of this happening in a war are so strange or so unlikely, guys, that just makes you think that these things aren't a coincidence, and I don't believe they are. Because how can you have a Zelensky, a former advisor, right, to Zelensky, betray him pretty much and start talking trash about him after he got fired, and then you have the Minister of Interior Affairs literally die a couple of days later along with other high-ranking officials, and then Zelensky apparently decides to tackle on corruption in the middle of a war when really there's no time, right? You want to focus all your attention on the situation on the battlefield. And so apparently this network of spies is discovered. Zelensky says that he's going to change up the leadership, that he's firing multiple high-level officials and governors and whatnot. And now as they're about to lose Bakhmut, Zelensky decides to sack their top commander in charge of the conflict that is taking place right down here in the eastern part of Ukraine, guys. So this guy has been in charge for months of the successful war or operation that Ukraine is launching on Russia, according to Western news sources, right? Russia hasn't advanced. The Russians are being crushed on the front lines. Yeah, they're taking some cities, but the Russians are suffering massive casualties. Ukraine is going to win this war. Victory is in sight. Vladimir Putin can't last much longer. He probably has cancer. He's probably dying. The Russians are too dumb on the battlefield. They don't know what they're doing. The Ukrainian forces are far superior. So they have all these positive things to say, but nothing to show for on the battlefield except continue Russian advances. They're now about to take Bakhmut, and Zelensky just can't hide it anymore. So what does he do? Well, he can't fire himself, so he starts taking out his anger on those around him. If the war is going so successfully, if Ukraine can actually win this war, right, why would you fire the top commander? Unless he's not doing a good job, which is the case because Ukraine is losing. They're about to lose Bakhmut. They're about to lose Kramatorsk and Slovyansk. They're going to lose a whole lot more by the time this is done. And so that is the actual reason why Zelensky doesn't know what to do, and now he's firing commanders. Now remember, when Russia switched commanders, they didn't even fire the commanders, they switched them, right? General Gerasimov, which I covered, he's now in charge of the whole operation. He's the highest ranking military commander in Russia's army, or general, or whatever his ranking is. The West made a big deal about that. They said that, the Russian leadership didn't know what to do. They were disorganized. They weren't having successes on the battlefield, so they were trying to switch commanders. But in that situation, they just switched them. And in this case, Zelensky actually fired this man. So let's go ahead and take a look, a picture here. This is the commander we're going to be reading about, Eduard Moskalyov. We're going to be taking a look here at the Hill. Now, this is a pro-Western article, guys, but I will show you some sources here, more sources actually, reporting on this. So you have Reuters reporting on this a day ago. Zelensky fires a top Ukrainian military commander, no reason given. The Hill, Sky News, Global News, pretty much all the mainstream media outlets reported on it, but you're not going to see it on television, right? You're not going to see it in video. You're not going to see it on CNN or Fox or any of these other Western media news programs. They're not going to talk about this because it doesn't benefit them. It doesn't help out their propaganda, right? It doesn't help out their interest. This would only show people that the Ukrainian leadership is in disarray. But anyways, enough of my talk. Sorry, guys. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So it says here, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issued a decree Sunday removing the commander of the military's joint forces operation, which is involved in the ongoing counteroffensive in the eastern Donbass region of the country. This is where the major fighting is going on, as we saw there on the map. Zelensky announced Eduard Moskalyov's dismissal in a one-line decree without any explanation. This is the very democratic Ukraine, right? According to Reuters, Moskalyov, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, had been appointed to the position last March in 2022, guys. So he's been at this for most of the war. Think about how huge that is. This guy has been in charge for most of the conflict, and according to Western propaganda, Ukraine has been winning, and they just fired him because Ukraine is winning. Yeah, there's a problem there, right? The JFO was launched as a resistance force in 2014 after Russia's seizure of the Crimean Peninsula and parts of the Donbass, and has been heavily involved in fighting since Moscow's full invasion a year ago. Moskalyov's dismissal is the latest in a series of changes to Ukraine's military amid a corruption scandal that nearly ousted Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov. He's probably next. And lastly, it will be Zelensky. Again, in the middle of a war, Zelensky decides to tackle on corruption by firing ministers around him, members of his cabinet, members of high-ranking members, as we're seeing here, of the military, as Russia is about to take Bakhmut, guys. As Russia is literally descending like a giant red tsunami. You tell me how this is any good. So it goes on here. It goes on here. The war in Ukraine surpassed its 1-year mark on Friday as Russian forces launched a new offensive earlier this month. Zelensky declared the year-long fight as a year of invincibility. For the Russians. In an address last week. Zelensky said last week that Ukraine will continue to defend Bakhmut. So check this out, guys. Just last week he said Ukraine will continue to defend Bakhmut. Doesn't sound too good if you're one of the soldiers inside of here, guys. You don't want to hear your leader telling the world that they're going to... What did he say again? So he said, Zelensky said last week that Ukraine will continue to defend Bakhmut, an eastern city in the Donetsk province that has seen months of brutal Russian attacks, but not at any price. So Zelensky did admit that they aren't willing to pay any price. Well, I don't know what more you're willing to pay here. I mean, whatever Russian forces are in Bakhmut here are literally about to be consumed by this giant red dragon's mouth here that is about to close its jaws around Bakhmut. Or I wouldn't even say dragon, that would be China. I would say more like a bear's jaws. There we go. So, we'll see how many men have to be left in the city before Zelensky actually gives the order for them to back out. Anyways, it goes on. President Biden visited Ukraine last week ahead of a trip to Poland to deliver remarks about the 1-year conflict between the two countries. In his address, he reiterated the United States and his allies' commitment to Ukraine's ultimate victory. So there you have it, guys. Again, this is definitely not a good sign, especially as Ukraine is about to lose major cities here, and things are going to develop quite quickly and quite intensely, I believe, here within the next couple of weeks and months, as I believe that Russia is going to be, they're going to be inspired by these victories. I think the morale of the troops is going to be boosted, and I think it's going to have the opposite effect on Ukrainian forces. And so, again, like many said since the beginning, Ukraine never had a chance. It still doesn't have a chance. The U.S. is not going to go all in here. Neither are any of these other nuclear superpowers. I don't believe so personally. I don't think we'll have a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia. Again, I don't think any of these superpowers are willing to risk nuclear annihilation of the human race over Ukraine, but they are making the best out of this situation, out of this opportunity to inflict as much damage as they can on Russia, right on its border here via Ukraine as a proxy. So I think that the more desperate the situation gets, even as it is quite desperate now, as we're now seeing Zelensky sacking top military commanders literally as they're losing battles here, which makes absolutely no sense. So he's pretty much, his government is crumbling right now. The front lines are crumbling. Everything is crumbling around him. And so I think the West is sort of going to try to keep up appearances. They're probably going to act really outraged and concerned. They're going to try and make it seem like they're going to accelerate their weapon shipments, right, to try to hurry up these tanks, these long-range missiles, possibly these jets that Zelensky has been trying to get. But I think it's all just going to be for show. Some of these things might reach Ukraine, but by the time they do, they really won't make any difference because, again, the U.S. is manipulating this, right? They're letting Ukraine know that they're not going to give them all these weapons. They're going to give them the weapons whenever the U.S. sees fit. And the U.S. knows that if they were actually to supply so many weapons to Ukraine, that they could actually pose a real threat to Russia. And I mean a real threat, like a threat where Russia could actually be conquered by Ukraine, or I would actually say defeated, because again, with these modern nuclear weapons, I don't think you can actually conquer a nuclear superpower. I think that the U.S. understands this, and so they know that Russia would, launch all its nuclear missiles before it could actually ever let that happen, which would mean the end of the United States, the end of the world. So they're not willing to support Ukraine up to that point, because again, for a conflict like that, it wouldn't even be Ukraine versus Russia. We're talking about a World War III scenario. We're talking about a collision between nuclear superpowers directly. And so the U.S. ultimately is trying to avoid that. That's why I believe they're trying to make the best out of this situation here. But I think they know, just like the Russians know, how this is going to end, and that's going to be with a Russian victory. But again, the U.S. will keep up appearances as much as it can. At the same time, I think Zelensky is going to grow more frustrated. I think he's going to realize that he's been used, and I think he's going to grow more unstable. He's going to start venting his anger, his frustration, his failures more and more on those around him. And I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with him. He either gets killed by Russians, by his own people, or he flees the country. I think him fleeing the country would be the most likely. He does seem to have a very stubborn character, so I could possibly see him fleeing out to the west of Ukraine to try to make it seem like he hasn't given up. But I don't think that he's actually willing to go down with his soldiers. I think he'll flee the ship at the end, and he will show his true colors. And so, yeah, that is the situation here, guys. Zelensky fired a top commander right now in charge of the troops down here as Russia is about to take Bakhmut. Okay, that's not Bakhmut. Bakhmut is right over here. Come on, zoom in. So there you have it, guys. That is the situation. I'm expecting things to deteriorate even more inside of Zelensky's government here, so I'll definitely keep an eye out for that. Anyways, thank you for tuning in, guys. Remember, the truth is stranger than fiction. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.